We back, baby. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so that you don't miss a thing. You are now tuned into the system behind the system. Welcome back to the DaVinci podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about why we struggle when we try hard to make real, long lasting change. What is that missing link that we don't quite connect when we're looking to make a transformation, or what we call an adaptation? And I'm bringing on a friend of mine who's an industry expert to help me unpack this biologically from an artistic and scientific perspective. His name's Frederick, and he's with Stretch to Win. He has a physical therapy degree, and with over 30 years of experience as a body worker, I think we're in for a treat. So buckle up your seatbelts and let's get ready to unpack and unravel the missing link. So what is the missing link? Is it motivation? You gotta wait till you're fired up and ready to go and ready to put forth that work so that you can make the change? Is it the stars gotta align? Do the planets have to line up? And then, the perfect timing, and then boom, everything just lines up and you transformed? Is it money? Is it education? What is it? Is it know-how? I think it's something a little bit deeper. The body is a very complex system. And when you talk about any type of change, we have to look at it from a broad point of view before we can go into a more refined point of view. You have to take all things into consideration, but after looking at all things, what is the one thing that most of us miss when it comes to making a real long lasting change? Chris and I are going to unpack that in our conversation today. Well, thanks for jumping on here with me today, Chris. And you know, last month we were having a really good conversation, and we went in many different directions. I think that was amazing. So let's share with the people today some of the things we were talking about. One of the biggest topics I think that sticks out right now, especially having you as a guest here on the podcast, is just like what's going on in the manual therapy space, the fascia space. Fascia is becoming such a hotter topic these days. Collagen and people are just getting more aware of it. But you've been in the field for a very long time. I kind of I'm in the field, but just at a different angle, And how I like to do things, I like to integrate things, bring them together, and make it make sense as
Sure.
one big picture. So I would love to hear from your perspective, just right off the cuff here as we begin the conversation. From your point of view in the industry, where do you see manual therapy and where do you see fascia?
If I may start with the concept, I believe that fascia, the whole idea of treating the body, let's just start with that in a very global, general kind of way, is going through a big transition still. Those are who are in the fascia world are basically talking about it differently than those who are not in that world. I'll just
Hmm.
put it out like that. So historically, the body was always treated as a collection of parts, muscles, joints, ligaments, everything we learned in anatomy, but it's reductionist thinking to that part. And it's treated that way by physicians, by physical therapists, and to some extent, single muscle training, strength training has been like that for a long time. I guess you could call that bodybuilding. They're
Hmm.
specifically trying to work on body parts, and that makes more sense. But that concept of bodybuilding was in athletic training, and that
Hmm.
doesn't work for the different players that play
Nice.
different sports. So that model can work for acute injury. If I get a fracture, I don't, if my femur, which I fractured when I was 10 years old in a car accident, if I got a fracture, I don't want to work on my neck or my foot. You
Hmm.
know, I
Yeah.
want I want that part to heal, and that makes sense. That's when you work on the part. But when you talk about chronic issues, which is often what we see, you don't see emergency people in emergencies, right? For the most
Mm.
part. this audience, we see chronic issues. There's going to be compensations that have developed over time. They consider chronic pain anything greater than 3 months. So if you're seeing anybody with a history of anything for more than 3 months, is chronic. And the more years behind that, the more the body takes a zigzag approach with that original injury. So if I broke my right leg in this accident, my left hip has compensated, but not only that, my left shoulder, then my right side of my neck, you know,
Hmm.
and it was my right femur, so my left knee, and then my right foot. So the longer and the more problems you add on to that, I just talked about one femur fracture. It healed, but I had a limp and had all these things develop, and my body has to adapt. And it adapts by doing a zigzag approach to compensate for that. But now, due to fascia research, so there are still, let me just backtrack with the old school, I'll call it old school way of thinking and approaching muscle by muscle, joint by joint, nerve by nerve. When you do rehabilitation or training that way, it's very limited. I think we've hit the limit of that kind of training and thinking. And we're running into problems with people coming back saying, I'm still not better. I'm still not, breaking that personal record or personal best in training. What's going on here? And so largely due to fascia research and a fascia way of thinking, a fascial perspective,
Right.
it's become much more global to know that force transmission is through the whole system.
Right.
So when you're looking at a problem, you're thinking about what was the mechanism of injury? Like, how did this first start? If we want to talk about an injury or strain or a tear, and where did it go through the body? And where did it end up? It might have started at the foot and it went through the whole body and it got stuck somewhere where you
Hmm.
have a restriction, and that's where another injury occurred. And we're now learning, if I move on from global force transmission is global, not just local, the movement is now, we think of it coordinated through tensional networks.
Hmm.
A lot of people still think of tension as a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. Now we need
See,
tension.
that's precisely it. And so when you have excessive tension, you can stretch it, you can release it, you can open it up. But when you have deficient tension, which is what a lot of people don't think about, is when you're hypermobile. And what we're seeing these days is that the hypermobility percent of people coming into my classes, I would say it's at least 1 out of 5 are hypermobile. And some of them don't even realize it. You would think they would realize it. They don't realize it. And this is a significant issue. And I make it simple. I try to simplify fascia because fascia is complex. And so I just talk about adjusting your tensional network. If it's excessive tension, you adjust it to release tension there, not through every place, not through just one place, but you have to analyze the whole tensional network. Let's say the deep front net or the deep front line of your body, right? Going
Hmm.
from your foot, let's basically say to your tongue, I mean, to your organs on the inside. You're addressing, where the dysfunction is, but you have to coordinate throughout. And basically, I talk about balancing out that tension. And when you have this fascial perspective and fascial approach, you start realizing really the connections. You're working above and below where they complain, where they have a pain, where they say it's tight. It's the same thing as a pain. You don't necessarily stretch what's tight.
Hmm.
It could be a response to something else. A lot of people say my hamstring's tight in training. Athletes
Right.
say my hamstring's tight. When you test their hamstring, it's actually sufficient. It's 90
Yeah.
degrees or even
I
even
see
higher.
that a
It's like
lot. Yeah.
exactly. It's a very common pattern. And that's part of fascia. You start recognizing patterns. You don't stretch the hamstring. You have to find out why are they feeling a strain, excessive pulling in the hamstring or tightens up. And so you have to understand what is the fascial connection. Basically, if I just summarize, it's looking at it through the fascial systems and realizing like the nervous system is inseparable from the mechanical system. And people like Thomas Myers, Robert Schleip, big time researchers into fascia, they help shift the conversation
Hmm.
more towards not muscle by muscle, but more about fascial continuity, fascial elasticity, sensory motor, mechanotransduction. These are terms I feel that are going to become more commonplace.
Oh yeah.
I think people in the fascial world, are using these terms a lot and becoming familiar with it, but the greater public doesn't. We have to get used to educating, just like you are here with the podcast, educating everybody with these new terms, because those terms are going to replace the muscle by muscle and that anatomical approach that we've been using for the past 500 years, basically.
It also makes me think there really is no hamstring. We've classified that area of the body as hamstring, but we know it connects to the soleus and the gastrocnemius, and then to the glutes and all the way up. And so that's one structure, not separate structures. So truthfully, there is no hamstring. But do we stop saying hamstring? No, because when I say hamstring, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And I can
Hmm.
try to put uh, adaptations and create adaptations in that area based on what I know about how the hamstring or that area functions, so on and so forth. I love it. So I think that's a great
Hmm.
distinction, and I think it's very much needed with when as we begin to clarify the language and the understanding, because we're all still learning and there's a lot more to learn. But as we go along, we do need to just keep everything we've and sift through it and organize
Hmm.
it. So tell the people what you do and kind of like your background and what Stretch to Win your mission is.
Sure, I've been around a long time on this earth, so I'm not going to go that far back. But basically, if I stick with just professional credentials, I mean, I'll just briefly mention my movement background. Started with, I would say, watching Bruce Lee films. We were, before the podcast started, we were
Nice.
talking about mastery, the masters of the world that have mastered their art, their practice. And so Bruce Lee, when I was a kid, was the man.
Yeah.
And we made homemade nunchucks and bopped ourselves in the head trying to learn ourselves how to do them a nunchuck,
You're right.
growing up in Brooklyn in those tough neighborhoods. And so from there, I went to gymnastics in high school, working out with the gymnastic team. I didn't want to be on the team. I was busy studying architecture in high school.
Hmm.
So and that was my first exposure to Buckminster Fuller and tensegrity,
Yeah.
was in architecture in high school. Buckminster Fuller was my hero.
Excellent.
At the time, I was like, he's a genius, and he legitimately is a genius.
Yeah.
But it was someone I highly admired at that young age. And then I got involved in martial arts, Aikido, Kung Fu, and I gravitated more to Tai Chi and Qigong, and some of the fighting arts, but I was learning how to about healing, how to balance the body
Hmm.
with more the gentle movements of Tai Chi. Made a huge impression on me, along with the meditation I learned at that time, to work with the mind and the body together, and how to go inward to find answers in yourself.
Hmm.
uh, and then basically dance. I was a professional dancer,
Oh, great.
and I just happened to have, according to the dance world, I had the perfect body for dance. I made rapid progress and actually got accepted into Joffrey Ballet, which at the time was in the top three of the country, and got injured pretty much right away. And this is my first exposure to the system, how they just couldn't get me better, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, it was just so frustrating. And anyone who basically commits their life to an art, your art is it. It's yourself. It's an expression of your soul. It's not just having a bean counter job. It is your soul being expressed. And when that's taken away from you, it hurts down deep.
Oh man, I can totally relate to that, my Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
my one of my very first arts was music.
Okay.
And I haven't done music in a very long time. I had to go get a real job. I used to make music, and like I tried to break into the music industry. It's a tough industry, right?
Yeah.
So I was out there with my CDs, and that's what I did for a living, trying to make a living off of that. And then
Mm-hmm.
I had to go get a real job because I had a kid. So I stopped doing
Yeah.
music. I haven't picked it back up, but I know what you're saying. There's times where
Yeah.
it's like you feel that there's a missing, and you have to express, and it does come from very deep within that artistic expression. Oh man, I'm totally there with you. Nice.
Yeah. It's in your soul, and it never leaves. And so I basically, to fast forward a bit, I specialize in dance. It's called dance medicine. It's dance physical therapy, but it's literally called dance medicine because physicians, and all people of the rehabilitation team, including Pilates instructors and others, it's a collaborative network of specialists that are trying to help the dancer, including psychologists, psychiatrists. And I was heavily involved with pioneers, dance medicine pioneers.
Hmm.
It was called Westside Dance Physical Therapy. And we had a contract with New York City Ballet. So I was always at Lincoln Center working at the theater with the highest level of elite professional dancers. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of, you want to talk about tensegrity and fascia, you are forced to recognize the connections with people who explore the limits of anatomy. I mean, they push it to their ultimate flexibility and strength limits. And that was extraordinary because my boss at the time, Marika Molnar, I have to give her credit. She's just a beautiful lady who was a dance medicine pioneer. We learned through her. And it was we were in a laboratory to develop new equipment,
Wow.
and so the Pilates discs that people stand on and rotate,
Yeah.
it was developed by Ken Endelman, who is the owner, creator of Balanced Body Pilates equipment, with Marika Molnar in our studio where I worked.
Nice.
That was the laboratory. We developed all this with the dancers. Then it went to production as a prototype, and then they produced it. So they had patents on it. But it was a lot of that was developed in our studio. And Pilates rehabilitation was developed in our studio. That never existed as a training track in Pilates. It was just like the Pilates method, and that was it. And now they have different training tracks depending on how
Hmm.
you want to emphasize that. So it was a rich place to be instructed. And I came to Arizona, met my wife, and the rest is history. I was her kind of not a client. I was introduced by an orthopedic surgeon. Say, hey, there's a lady. They call her the stretch lady. And man, when I saw her this one time, my hips were so loose, man. I played the best basketball with my buddies, and he's
Yeah.
already, in his 40s, and he's like, I felt like I was 18 all over again. So I was like, okay, I got to call her, and I got on her table, and I mentioned the car accident that wrecked my body. You know, it
Hmm.
was pretty severe accident. I was laid out in the hospital in bed for 4 months in a body cast, and so I had a short leg. And so, in Brooklyn, to have a gangster limp, it works for you. You know what I'm saying? It works for you. I
Yeah,
had a
that
natural
that might
one.
take you far in Brooklyn with it. Yeah, I feel
you
you.
know, I, I had a natural one. You know what I'm saying? Like it was exaggerated for real, though.
Oh shoot.
And so she evened me out. And I've had people try to do that before. I was like, okay, I have to learn this. And so Anne calls it, we called it together fascia stretch therapy.
Hmm.
But she
Yeah,
called
I
it with
remember
her.
that. So
Mhm.
fascia, and please elaborate how like, because I don't hear fascia stretch therapy anymore, but when I first heard of like what you do, it was fascia stretch therapy. There's someone in like near me who is a practitioner as well. That was like my
Yeah.
first introduction to it.
Yeah. It's FST. For short, acronym is FST. And you asked about the mission
Yeah.
of sort of our purpose, our company purpose. Basically, it is building on what we just talked about. It's recognizing the fascia model of the human body. My Anne Frederick, my wife, the creator of FST, essentially started with professional athletes. She literally had to work with 26 different teams at Arizona State University
Hmm.
as a student graduate assistant in the athletic department. She got to work on
Wow.
every single sport, multiple athletes, and she
Oh, that's
developed her
excellent.
sense because she's not a physical therapist. She's not trained in any of that. She never learned how to stretch anybody, but she grew up in her mother's dance studio since the age of 5.
So she's a dancer
She
too.
she was a mover since 5 years old, and then she became a teacher at 12. So she's so used to the morphology and the function of the human body, and then helping her students to get more flexible. Because as a dancer, we really need even more flexibility. Some people were very tight. And then she developed her system first as a young person. She was already doing it. And that's another story.
Hmm.
She had a calling at 11 years old of what to do with her life. I mean, don't we all wish we had that calling and followed it, right?
Early, yeah.
So that's what she did. And so fascia stretch therapy is really not just about stretching, and we can talk about this. Stretching in our world is not elongating all the time because you can hurt people by stretching some things when it shouldn't be stretched. And when they're hypermobile, you better not be stretching something that's hypermobile and making it unstable now. And so there, you have to balance it out with compression.
Hmm.
And you have to learn how to, again, assess the fascial lines, the tensional network to see here, too much, there's deficient tension. We need to find out where there's excessive tension. And when you take off the excessive tension, the deficient tension shortens and actually balances out.
There it goes. Ugh.
So they don't, yeah, and they don't feel it there. So when you stretch them where they need it along that fascial, that tensional network line, or we like to say net, because that's a three-dimensional sense of a net covering
Mhm.
the outer to the inner. When you basically balance it out and you find something excessively, let's say, loose, which is deficient tension, same thing, you need to add tension. How do you do that? Yeah, you can strengthen it, you can tense it, but you need, in our world, look for where there is a restriction, and it's usually above and below the area that's moving too much. Because the person complains about usually where the joint moves too much, that hurts. Or even the muscle starts to get strained and pulled. You don't go to that muscle, you don't go to that joint. You look for where it's not moving enough because it's a kinetic chain.
Mhm.
And so every part has to do its job, and the parts that are not moving have to move. And as soon as you get the whole chain smooth and fluid and flowing the way it's supposed to move, and yet that's where you have to understand movement patterns and how things are supposed to move, all of a sudden the strain goes away, you know. And speaking about the theme of this talk here, how the body actually adapts, you have to give it time. I mean, it could have been out of balance for years. So
Right.
it's not just going to snap back, right? You have to give the body time
Exactly. Yeah,
after
people
you work
think
on
they can
people.
make change overnight, but they didn't get where they're at overnight. And
Right.
it might have taken you 15 years to end up where you're at. It may not have to take 15 years to, get to where you want to be, but you do got to be patient and give yourself some time. You
Yeah.
said
So,
you you said you
sorry.
also did martial arts, right?
Right.
I
A
think
couple of different types. Yeah.
Tai Chi and Qigong, I would consider those martial arts. But then maybe you don't count the nunchucks when you were young trying to be Bruce Lee, but
No, I won't. I won't count that. No, I went to Chinatown in New York, and I used to go to Wu Mei Kung Fu and different kinds of Kung Fu schools of Kung Fu down like serious where the Chinese gangs were in downtown. I mean, in Manhattan, in Chinatown, there were some serious schools there, And I didn't go to any of those schools. I more or less went in and observed, and just I'm trying to decide what to do. I went into Aikido, New York. It's called the New York Aikikai Society. I
yeah,
really enjoyed, and Sensei Yamada was the sensei or teacher. Sensei means teacher at the
yep.
time. And I loved the rolling because it was similar to my gymnastics training. So it's like judo where you throw people, but you have to know how to fall, right? And roll out
Hmm.
of it real quick. So I would say that was some of my first formal training because Japanese training is very formalized, right?
Hmm.
And then I went to jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Oh, excellent.
because there's Japanese, jiu-jitsu is Japanese originally, and then the Brazilians loosened it up, and it
It's a
became
good
something
contrast.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my body loves jiu-jitsu. It just works. And I did that training actually later in my life. And the Tai Chi and Qigong were, you can use, a lot of people don't realize the Tai Chi can be sped up fast speed and used as a martial art. Most people see old people doing it in the park,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's great for balancing the body for anyone who's elderly to decrease the risk of falling, because that's what happens with elderly people. Their fascia, their myofascia, neuromyofascia is so restricted. They've lost height, they've lost space in their joints. And the whole goal in FST is to restore space in your joints.
Mm.
That's, if I want to just say one of the principles is to restore space in your body. In fact, Tom Myers calls it spatial medicine, is to restore, because all of us get shorter through time. How does that happen? Where
Compression,
does it happen?
tension.
Yeah, and the imbalances of compression and tension, but we start to get literally more compressed. We're falling into gravity more and more.
Mm.
And in fascial stretch therapy and other great therapies, we try to restore that, and people get taller. We've had full grown adults get 1 to 2 inches taller because that's how much they already lost. without them even realizing it. And so this happens to athletes sooner because, you hear of athletes getting hip replacements at young ages because they just wore it out a lot quick. And these days, we now realize they need to do cross training. They need to do a balance of different kinds of therapies, and not more is better. There's
Yep.
also recovery time is important. Like, take a rest. That's just as important as hard discipline training.
Totally.
You just got
Yeah.
you just got to do it in a balanced fashion.
There was a guy, man, I think it was like like early 1900s, 1908 or something. I can't think of his name right now. Something wants me to say Carl something, but he would do one workout a week. And I mean, this guy was like, he was fit, prime condition. I got to get his name. I'll get it to you when I can take a look. But he would do one workout. This was his thing, one workout a week, but he would give it everything he had and then give himself the rest of the week to recover from that. And I mean, he elicited adaptation and then let his body rebuild. So it makes sense. We get into our society, we get into more is better and we got to work harder. And okay, I'm going to do 5 workouts instead of 4 and I'll progress faster. But you're right. Rest is part of the equation, a very important part of the equation. So you did martial arts and you did dance. And most people don't look at dance as a sport, but it's very athletic. It's also an art though too. It's like the first thing you think of is it's an art form, and martial arts literally has the word art in it. But
Mhm,
that's a sport as well. So the combo, I think it's really cool hearing that you did both, and
mhm,
it shines a light on kind of what we touched on earlier with that art side of movement, and it blends right into sport and athleticism. But movement is an art. As I'm probably sure you've heard, there's people that are saying there's no such thing as stretching. And this came to mind just while we're having our conversation right now, that the
sure.
body doesn't actually stretch, that it phase changes. I want to hear it from you what that what your take on that is, and how do you feel about that, and like where do you go with that?
Sure. There's a lot been written on this, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. And I think part of it, a good part of it, is it comes down to definitions, meanings, and nomenclature. That's really what it comes down to. Because when this first came out about the controversies of stretching, we've been through all this, and the controversies of
I'm
stretching
sure.
started about 25 years ago.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
well,
It's a waste of time. It decreases power and vertical leap and strength and all kinds of
okay.
things.
Hmm.
I'd say yes and no. It depends. One of my favorite answers is not a cop out because Einstein was right. It's all about relativity.
Right.
And the answer is it's relative to the circumstance and situation. So I'll just say this. If you look, I'm a physical therapist. I was trained to lengthen with stretching. We're lengthening. We're disrupting scar tissue. We're breaking apart scar tissue to get the length back. That's the thinking behind most people with stretching, that we're trying to just lengthen it. That is not our philosophy. That is not our definition of stretch, the way we use the term.
Hmm.
I mean, if I'm yawning and I stretch like this, am I ripping scar tissue? I'm stretching. When I get up in the morning and I yawn and I go like this, the body literally lays down collagen when you sleep. That's why you're stiffer in the morning, because body gets colder, you're stiffer, you're not warmed up, you're tighter. So people just, without thinking about it, you yawn and you'll stretch. Some people are more expressive than others, but in general, you yawn. Even just opening your mouth and opening wide is a stretch of your TMJ, your face. But people usually follow with the body. That's a morning stretch. You do 1 rep. Are you hanging out and trying to pull things beyond where they should go? No.
Hmm.
So it's really the context of the word stretch. So people went crazy about thinking, oh, you should not tear. You can tear things, your sarcomeres, or you can change the length where it shouldn't go. You know what I mean? You're
Hmm.
you're kicking in the stretch reflex where the muscle wants to pull back in because you're going too far. Yes, yes, and yes. All those things are not good, but that's not what we're doing in therapeutic stretching. You should not be doing that. Now, as a physical therapist, I was taught to say this, Neo, you're my patient, because we use that term, you're my patient. And I'm going to say, Neo, you got a frozen shoulder. You better take your pain meds 30 minutes before I come in to stretch your shoulder. It's going to hurt.
Hmm.
That's why PT, physical therapy, the other word for that is pain and torture.
Pain and torture. I love it.
They're going to see their physical terrorist.
Hey, that's
It
kind of what we
hurt.
do in a workout too. Pain and torture. No.
Well, it hurt. Yeah, it hurt. And so that's not what we do. And I think it's just a misunderstanding of that term, because the old school thinking of stretching is that. And honestly, we are rebranding things into the word fascianetics, which is what you heard us
Wow.
use
Okay.
at the Fascia Training Academy. It's fascianetics. I think it takes the word stretch out of there, because too many people don't understand that's not what we do. We don't hurt people. We don't
Right.
overextend. We
Right.
don't over elongate. We balance things out. We're adjusting the tensional network, which means where it's excessive and you don't need
There you
that
go.
excessive tension, then you stretch it to the point where it's reasonable and it works,
Hmm.
not too much. And so basically, I think that in a nutshell would answer sort of our take on the word stretch, how people think of it in a one-dimensional kind of fashion, because we do three-dimensional, omnidirectional stretching, or I would say mobilization, where
Okay.
we do some stretching, some compression. We do it omnidirectionally. The old school way of thinking is along a straight line and pulling. And that's old school stretching. If you just look at old school stretching of the hamstring, one angle, just straight up towards the shoulder. And you see everybody, coaches, people
Yeah.
with ropes. That's the only angle. Now, most of us know you got to go out to the side. You got to go medial, cross to the medial line, do the lateral outside. It's multidimensional because why? Because the muscle is multidimensional. It's three-dimensional. It's
Right.
not just a rubber. It's not a rubber band.
Yeah, that elevates our understanding, man, because I feel like a lot of what we do, sometimes we're thinking one, two-dimensional, and
Right.
along with all this new, understanding about the body and coming back to a whole body approach, like we're also including the body is three-dimensional. That changes everything.
There were studies done in the 90s, even. Ian Schreier, his name is. He was a well-known researcher about stretching, and he put up a lot of studies, evidence-based studies, that stretching reduces power, decreases power in the vertical jump,
Hmm.
and basically any power movement where you have to recruit as many motor units as possible
It was like
to
if you
jump.
stretch before the activity, it would reduce it. Not
Yes.
like I stretched last week and I got the benefit from
Well, let me tell.
stretching and then
This is the problem. In the articles that followed by the press, the media, they said, looks like stretching is bad.
right.
I was like, oh my God, you didn't even define what kind of
Yeah,
stretching. See, the public doesn't even know there's different kinds of
right,
stretching. And
right.
actually, a lot of people don't realize there's static stretching where you're holding it for 30 seconds. And if you do that right before performance, you're going to risk injury. You're going to decrease performance and risk injury.
Hmm.
And then they extrapolated that one finding or a couple of findings that repeated that. They said now all stretching is bad. They don't even realize what about dynamic. They didn't even discuss dynamic stretching.
Right, it makes a really shocking, tension grabbing headline. That's probably why, right?
And then everyone reads it, and then people blog it and they podcast it, and they don't know what they're talking about, because they're talking about one dimensional. It's really what I call one dimensional thinking that follows a one dimensional movement. You're so
Hmm.
limited and talk about this, and then you extrapolate to everything. That is the worst science to even think that way. And to title your research study that stretching may not be the best, they did it in a conservative way, but they said stretching. You don't say stretching. There's many kinds of stretching that you just revealed, Dr. Researcher or whoever, that you really don't know much about stretching, because there's like six different types of stretching, and they all have different actions on the body, physiologically, structurally, and otherwise. They don't talk about that.
Hmm.
And so it's very lacking, and it's horrible research. Stretching has traditionally had some of the worst research, not analyses, or the the case studies. It escapes me the terminology in research that you use it, but
Mhm.
it's basically they were of the lower quality, not the highest quality research that was
Okay,
done.
got you. That makes a
And
difference.
that's it makes a huge difference. Now you'll find better quality coming out and more actually studies that substantiate the benefits of stretching. Whereas
Good.
in the old days, like 20 years ago, it was like all stretching is bad, but people weren't doing the proper research to find out what is good. They were making conclusions about limited knowledge.
I think that's why it takes like a practitioner like yourself and to be able to, fine tune it to the person. Okay, there's multiple different types of really stimuli that we can categorize as, ways to stretch. You're an expert at that. You can look at someone and say, okay, well, out of these X amount of ways, these are the three that I'm going to do for their hamstring, glute, hips, and that's what
Hmm.
they need. The general public, they're thinking stretching and they just think one thing. And it makes me think actually, because this is something I've thought about and wondered about and tried to make sense, right? When I first ever learned stretching was back in like middle school gym class or maybe even earlier, but it was hold for like a whole minute. You go into the position, hold it for a whole minute. And then it became like new research came out, and then it became okay, only hold it for 30 seconds, rest it a little bit, and then do another 30 seconds. And then it became like 5, 10 seconds. And then it became don't hold it at all, dynamic stretching, right? And then, oh no, first ballistic stretching, really aggressively go into the range of motion and pull or stretch um, and and target that area quickly, aggressively. But then it became dynamic stretching, and that's like the hottest thing right now. And I've heard people say, "Oh, static stretching, holding it for too long, that's bad. It's bad for the nervous system, yada yada yada." And everyone's doing dynamic stretching, and which is crazy because to me, dynamic stretching is really just being dynamic. It's just you're just
Yeah.
moving. We
Hmm.
can look at it as movement, and okay, if I take my body to this, okay, I start to feel a stretch, but I'm just moving. I'm just being
Hmm.
dynamic. So I think what we're really talking about with dynamic stretching is just be dynamic and go to the ends of range of motions and let that feeling happen and that stimulus happen. But I'm trained in kung fu. That's my martial arts of choice.
Hmm.
I've studied a little bit of jujitsu, judo, aikido as well, but I've really practiced kung fu. And my sensei, because he would have me stretch in the beginning of our classes and sessions,
Hmm.
and I asked him one day because I just this was like a couple years ago, and I had read a recent paper. So I asked him about it, and he made a really good point. He said static stretching allows time for the body to like understand the stimulus you're giving it, and so that it can make adaptations, adjust, and you're also holding tension. You're holding the fascia in that position. It's gonna adapt over time. We know that, right? If you only load it, like just taking it to another realm, if you only hold the dumbbell for 2 seconds, how much adaptation can you really get from that? Well, hold it for 2 minutes. So an expert like yourself can work with somebody and say, okay, this person may need to hold it in that area for 2 minutes, right? Hold the stress,
Hmm.
or they might need 2 seconds in this area.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of, I mean, I'm sure you have all the types of stretches in your tool belt and you work on a person.
Well, I think parameters need to be understood: intensity, duration, frequency.
Hmm.
Same for training, strength training. You need to know how intensity is, how deep is the stretch. We talk about R1 as the first
Hmm.
barrier of resistance. When me, the practitioner, feels, let's say, on your body, I'll feel where your body kicks back like it's no resistance, no resistance. I'll feel the weight of your leg. Let's say I do a straight leg raise and I'm lifting up a straight leg and I feel the weight of your leg, but that's not what I'm talking about. You'll feel like it starts to slow down on its own because it's adding tension, it's building tension. That's basically where we will start a stretch. That's considered light. So you can go to R2, you can go to R3, the anatomical limit.
Got you.
So just because you're doing static stretching, it's not a
Wow.
bad thing.
Even more
Or
customization. That is crazy,
it's more
Chris. Oh
custom.
my
It's more
gosh.
custom.
I
It's
love
this
that.
is what they, but they don't
Tailored.
talk about this. They don't talk about this. They only have one way that they're doing it. And it's usually static for 30 seconds or any variation of 15, 30, 60. And we don't even do that. We don't hold any stretches. We don't hold it because the body, the way we do it on people, they don't like it. You just stand there and what am I going to
Yeah,
do?
true.
Drink coffee, have an espresso while I'm waiting for that 60 seconds. It's boring and it's not effective. And so we keep it moving. We keep it moving. We do slow dynamic. If anything, what we do is a very slow, it's in my book, Stretch to Win. I talk about very slow, slow, fast, very fast. You vary it
Wow.
up based on the function and their goals. What do they need at the moment? They don't do that. They do one speed, X number of seconds, this intensity, that's it. That's traditional old school stretching.
Mm.
And that's why Anne, she went to the library at ASU when people went to libraries, all these books on strength and conditioning, one book on stretching.
Really?
She said, there's something to this.
Oh
It's being
yeah.
ignored. They'll
Wow.
say, athletes, do it on your own. It doesn't matter. That kind of thing. And so there is something to be said for designing, like you design a strength program, you got to just design a flexibility program based on the person, based on their asymmetries in their body. It's a big thing. It's a study. It's a specialization. You don't just
Mm.
go to anybody and get stretch. You can. You may hit it. It's a gamble. Maybe this person was great
Right.
and they understood your body. They felt your body.
Wow.
Other people get overstretched. Other
Wow.
people get hurt while they're being stretched. It's a big deal now. That's why there's franchises. The investors are pumping money into assisted stretch places because it's the thing that my wife started. I literally did the
I
research.
noticed that.
She started the industry. We don't own any franchises because she said to me a long time ago, Chris, I don't want it to be cookie cutter.
Yeah.
People are individuals. Their bodies have a history. Their bodies are individuals. We have to customize it. So it's like we're not cookie cutter, we're customized.
Love it.
We're not standardized, we're personalized because people need that personal attention if they really want optimal adaptation, optimal change, and optimal performance in their life.
So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like when you're working with someone on the table, you're flowing through different
Mhm.
angles, positions, stretches. It sounds like a dance.
As you assess, though, you're flowing because you can this body flow? That's one question you're asking yourself as a practitioner when you're working on someone. Does this body flow? Does it have a good fluid lymph system? I'm assessing all the systems. That's a fascial assessment. I'm assessing all systems because the fascia touches all systems and affects all systems. So on demand stretch, I mean, it's like on that angle right here. It's flowing. Oh, it's not flowing here. I got to spend a little time right at this angle, customized for them, which will be different than on the other side of their body. And it's like, this is what they need here. Oh, I got to hold this a little longer than the other side. The other side flowed, not right here on this
Mm,
side, because of their function, what they did, their history, their surgery, their
mhm.
scar tissue. It's totally a feel art. It's an art. You want to bring the art back? It's art on science. It's art built on the science and the knowledge applied. You have a knowledge of how the fascia system connects, where it is. And there's like 20 different kinds of fascia. You tell me fascia doesn't
Yeah.
stretch. There are people who say fascia doesn't stretch. Which types of fascia are you talking about, sir or madam? Because fascia with a lot more elastin, my ear has elastin. You know how mobile my earlobe is?
Mm,
But
mm.
my IT band, no, you should not stretch that. It's meant to hold like steel.
Yeah.
That's why bodybuilders, you see the adductor pop in. They have strong adductors, quads, and hamstrings. The IT band only goes so far. It's containing, it's a force transfer system. It's a mechanism to transfer force
Mm,
from your upper body from the opposite lat into the glute, functional net, functional line of Tom Myers, opposite lat, left glute, left IT band down through the knee and into the foot. That IT band better be strong. Otherwise, you're going to buckle your knee. You're going to have injuries.
big
So you
time.
don't
Real quick
stretch it.
too.
You work around the IT band. You work on the vastus lateralis in the front of it. You work in the lateral hamstring on the back of it to balance out the pull. And in the glutes, the same there, you have two lines of pull on the IT band. That's got to be balanced out. not the IT band itself, which is like when you roll on, it's like rolling over speed bumps sometimes. It's like, ah, man, that hurts. And you may feel good a little bit, and then it comes back, and then it comes back, and then it comes back because you're not going to the cause. You're going where you think it's tight.
I think you shined a huge light on the fact that, like when I first got into this industry, I went and studied for a personal training certification, and there wasn't much stretch in there. But like I started giving, and we do that as coaches, right? In my realm, as a fitness coach or personal trainer, we give people stretches, but a lot of the study was wrapped around loading muscle and dumbbell exercises and cable exercises and kettlebells, things like that. There wasn't a whole lot of education, and there isn't out there on stretching. But I think you're
Hmm.
opening up a whole arena that is like, I think that's what you alluded to, that is just like not defined right now. We need tons more education on stretching because you can sit it right next to exercise with a kettlebell or a dumbbell. We have so much
Hmm.
education wrapped around that. We're missing so much for coaches, practitioners, and personal trainers, alike who give stretching to their clients. But where was that? At least some formal education. Now you can read a book and study the work that you guys have, things like that. But it should be integrated into a lot of the education we're already receiving. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. That's shining a big light on that.
So if you want to reduce it to like three systems, if you talk about like nervous system readiness, if the brain perceives any kind of threat while you're training, something's hurts, not confident. There's a lot of people, for instance, okay, I'll give you an example. ACL tears are common in sports,
Mhm.
right? ACL. They get repaired 3 years to the day, it fails again. And we talk about they never get the confidence about that their knee is the same. There's this fear built in. And so when my summarization of that is the nervous system has to be ready for the training. And so when
Mhm.
it perceives threat, even when they think there's not a threat, there's a threat that they still don't trust the movement, the training that you're giving them or you're rehabilitating them. So the brain, if the brain perceives that threat, and the amygdala is basically where it is, it won't allow the change and it will maintain a protective tension. And that's what we're talking about. What to stretch, what not to stretch. It will have a protective tension, and that's where you have to be careful. You have to understand, why is that tense. It's not just because it's tight. A lot of times we call it, it's not that the fascia is tight, their nervous system is kicking in, they are upregulated. And so when
Mhm.
they're laying on the table, they should be relaxed. They're not relaxed. When you take their leg and move it, there's a threat in there, and oftentimes the athlete won't talk about it.
Gotcha.
They don't even mention it. So that's part of the things that you have to learn how to assess and how to pick up on that. People who change quickly, okay, that's a person example of someone who won't change as fast because they haven't gotten over that fear from a past injury, bad memory, and they still threaten their brain for whatever reason. People who change quickly, they feel safe in the movement and they have also good proprioceptive awareness. That's the confidence, right?
Mhm.
when and then there's load appropriateness. The second thing after nervous system readiness is like load appropriateness. Too much load, they compensate. Too little load, they never adapt, right?
Yep.
And so that's the sweet spot. The sweet spot is enough stimulus to challenge the body, but not enough to trigger
Gotcha.
defense in the
Gotcha.
body, right? So that's where we get stuck with overtraining and even undertraining. So that's load appropriateness. And then
So
the
so
last thing
so
would be,
when it comes to stretching, that's the same thing. You can
yeah, same thing.
understretch and overstretch. Oh
Same
man,
thing.
that changes
Yeah.
the game.
Strengthening, lengthening, or strengthening and stretching. It's the same. This applies to both. Last thing will be variability versus repetition. This is a big one. The body will adapt, and it sounds obvious, but I'll explain it. The body adapts to what you repeat, not what you once in a while do. So the same for
Mm.
training, a stretch, or anything, right? People stay stuck and they're not changing. They do corrective work for a little time and then they don't do it anymore. Then they reinforce all old patterns of sitting all day or whatever it is that just goes
More
sets them
often.
back.
Mhm.
And then the system just defaults back to where they were, and you wonder why. I gave you these exercises, I'm doing good work, and you come
Good
back and now
point.
you're plateau, or you're not making the kind of change. So it's a little bit on them. I don't blame them, but I have to remind clients, when they come back, it's pretty funny. You say, "Show me the exercise I gave you last time." They're like, and I would say, "That's a very creative way of doing something I didn't teach you."
Yeah.
you know, it's funny. Like you give them a mobility sequence or something, they invented a whole nother way to do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll work from that. So basically, nervous system readiness, load appropriateness, and variability versus repetition will determine who is going to be stuck and not go beyond. And sometimes they need some coaching with that. And sometimes it's up to the practitioner to really dig deeper with some questions and try different things on their body that did not reveal itself in stretching and strengthening to challenge them a little differently, right? Not get stuck in the same routines. So you can grow on,
Wow.
on lots of levels.
I'm really big on integration, and I feel like some of the best practitioners, especially specifically in the fascia world, are much more artistically expressive, you know, but they have the science as well. You
Hmm.
can just have the science with no artistic expression, and I think you're missing some of the picture. But
Yep.
then you can have the art and no science, and that doesn't right. That doesn't mix well either. But I think some of the best people in the world in any craft, any field, mix the two. They have
Yeah.
solid science background, but then they allow themselves to, go with the flow a little bit and be expressive and be artistic. And I'm all for both of them. As we've talked and kind of unpacked it a little bit more, I think the what where I'm landing for now, and I probably say the thing that we all need to, myself included, especially myself, the link or the missing link to biological change is patience. Would you agree?
Yeah. I'd say in terms of your mind and really sitting with what you're trying to adapt, what is your goal, right? You want your body, let's say, to change, which is really body, mind, spirit, but you want something to change. Patience is big time. I always say you can't always hack time.
Mm.
You can't just always think you could do this in do things in 90 seconds. We live in a society right now, I feel, I've heard this over and over again, of overwhelming distraction. If I just
Wow.
pick two words, overwhelming distraction, I see it's so common with everybody, just pretty much everybody. And if you think of some of us have never been exposed to sort of a peaceful, tranquil, pastoral lifestyle. That doesn't even exist in the urban setting. But people, I would say these days, you want to create some patience, create a sanctuary that is your home. I don't care if it's a little studio apartment in the middle of the city versus a nice backyard and things where you can actually put your feet in the
Mm.
grass and meditate. Make your home a sanctuary so that no matter what happens during the day, when you come home, you're supported with that. And if you want other people in the home, they need to understand that, to respect that you need some of your time
Right.
is just to reset things, even just to sit and breathe and really listen to a little light music or whatever before you go to bed, or some brainwave things that I'm doing. Um, but something to help reset your body. Sanctuary brings you to peace. Blood pressure's going down, heart rate's going down. You're
Mm.
getting ready for bed. A lot of people, this just came out, studies. They're getting 8 hours of sleep, and it's still not optimal. It's not the number of hours.
Hmm.
It's actually prepping. They don't prep to go to sleep. They're still doing something that, they may time it for 8 hours, excuse me, but they're not ramping down. The
Mm.
ramp down has to start probably at least an hour before you go to sleep.
I
If
was just
you're
talking.
still
I was just
up
talking about
there,
that on a previous podcast.
perfect. So that's one thing. You talk about patience. Part of it is you're not recovering. Part of the impatience, honestly, you're still frazzled, you're
Yeah.
still frenetic. If you go into a frenetic world and you didn't sleep, you're more frenetic, you're less patient, you're actually irritable, and you don't even realize it until your wife tells you, or your loved ones tell you, you're really irritable, kind of thing. And you're like, what do you mean? Yeah, you say my attitude, right?
Yeah.
You just proved the point, right?
Right.
So and overwhelm is my goal has been to simplify, simplify, simplify.
Love it.
This is spring. Spring cleaning means purge your emails. Get rid of stuff you never looked at because you know what? You never will.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
right.
purge it. Delete, get it out. You're not missing anything. There's no FOMO there. You're not missing anything. And just simplify, simplify, because the world makes it more complex, more complex. And decide not to look at things. There's too much coming at you with social media and bells and whistles and advertise this. Just get it out, simplify. And so that's one thing is for patience. The second thing I would say is inflammation is the cause of all diseases. There's a lot of
Mm,
evidence towards this
mm,
inflammation. And so for
makes
me,
sense.
identifying as many factors that could be inflaming your body subtly without realizing it or overtly, do the best you can to get to the foundations of what it means to be good health. Pure this, pure that, pure this, pure water, as good as
Mm,
possible with its natural mineral balance. There's all these waters out there, but just honest to God, pure water, the way spirit, God, divine, this, has made it for us on this beautiful earth is what our ancestors evolved with pure water. Where they had pure water, they would look for that, right?
mm,
And
mm.
then it goes from there, pure food and then sleep, foundations. And
Movement,
I
yeah.
call it eliminate digital toxins. All the digital stuff
Wow.
that's coming at you, I call it digital toxins. It's like unnecessary, get out of my face. No, no more of this. I decide now, we should decide now what we accept into our digital world. Not
Mm,
everything. Not everyone's welcome, you know?
right,
I love
right.
when Apple says when someone tries to market spam me or scam me, and I have a choice with Apple, just delete or delete and report spam, report spam, report spam. Because to me, that's our greatest threat to everything. It's like that's what they should be protecting us as all these people try to scam us with anything.
Oh my gosh. It's getting worse
And
every day
it- it's
too.
getting it's getting worse, Neo, and I feel it through people. And I heard it with the AI school I'm going to. They didn't dwell on it. They just said a lot of people are scared because they hear all these things. It's like, and they said what I agree with. AI could be used for good or evil because
Mm,
people can be good or evil. It's your decision. We
yeah,
all have
right,
a
right.
shadow. We all have a shadow side. And if you choose to express your shadow side, your worst side, the dark side of yourself, well, so be it. That's that. And it's get that out of your life. And you use AI for good. If that's your intention, AI will be good. If that's not your intention, you're going to use it for nefarious purposes, right?
Right.
So it's like we have so much choice we never had before, and AI is going to level the
Choice
playing
overload.
field. AI is going to level the playing field in a way that kings and queens and royal families only had this information, and the oligarchs only had this information to hold the power over all of us. AI is going to give us so much ability. I'm not saying it's going to, heaven on earth. It's not going to be the only answer, but it will greatly aid you, I believe, and I'm going to prove it in simplifying your life and getting the garbage out, the toxins out, so you don't inflame digitally. And also, you can find pure sources of water, food, and all these things through AI, even better. Bring it to you, design your life, your house is your sanctuary. Then you have patience, and your body feels good, your life is simpler, and you actually have more time because AI is your digital assistant.
So there you have it. I know we went kind of high level, and that's what happens when two passionate people who think at a high level get together and have a conversation. But I know there was tons of nuggets in there for anyone. So as you begin to make transformation, you do want to be patient, give yourself some time, because like we discussed, if it took you 15 years to get to that state, it's going to take you a little bit of time, more than just 15 minutes or even 15 days to change it. So, patience. But as you're beginning to make change and adapt and adjust and transform, your body increases its ability to adapt more. Thank you for joining me today on this episode of the DaVinci podcast. Go check out DaVinciEngineered.com for more information on all that we do. And if you have any questions, reach out to me directly at International DaVinci on all platforms. I will see you next week on the DaVinci podcast.